for this study, what we did is we compared a group of 94 Hispanic patients with multiple sclerosis, of course, to a group of 94 Caucasian patients with MS, and those groups were both age and gender matched. So, you know, we wanted to keep everything uniform across the board. So really the biggest difference was the racial group. We also did a similar study to the one I'm presenting at ACTRIMS. You know, we looked at all of the sociodemographic information, but the biggest difference here in this project is that we actually looked at MRI measures of volume of different regions of the brain. And so what we did is we also calculated the disability scores of these patients at each clinical visit throughout their, their years that they've been followed with us. And we also looked at the time that the MRI was taken. And at that time, we calculated the disability scores, and we tried to find an association between volume measures in the brain and the specific disability scores of the patients at that time. We wanted to compare and see if those were different between Hispanic patients and Caucasian patients, and we did find some differences. Biggest ones being that, for example, the white matter seems to be more associated with disability in Caucasian patients compared to Hispanics. But when we look at Hispanics, the number of T2 lesions or inflammatory lesions in the brain seems to be a lot more, strongly associated with disability scores. And so that might suggest that the underlying pathologic processes that sort of drive disability in MS might have some sort of genetic component that, should be investigated. That is one of the findings. The other one is that in both groups, both Hispanics and Caucasians, we found that the thalamic volume actually is more strongly predictive of future disability. So not, cross-sectionally, but predictive within 2 to 3 years. If the volumes are smaller in patients, then they're more likely to develop accumulating disability and permanent disability over time. So that was one thing that was common between the two, but then there's other differences. So moving forward, what this brings to our attention is probably the biggest one is that whenever we're doing clinical trials in MS, we, of course, have studies that have looked at volumetric relationships with disability. I think the biggest takeaway from this is that we need to take into account race and ethnicity as a possible compounding factor that should be, taken into account when basically interpreting your results, because these are different between races. And so if we just combine them all together and average them out, then we might lose some of that accuracy in our results.